who's like, for example, in Australia, if you're just going to Coles or Woolworths to do your fruit and veg shopping, you're not going to get much. But if you go to markets and, more Asian groceries,
That's right.
then
Yeah.
you're going to get those vegetables that we get back home that are still going to be beneficial for you.
Western diets are kind of trying to bring in the turmeric lattes and cinnamon. They're focusing, and this is like stuff that we obviously grew up eating.
Are carbs as bad as people make them to be?
No, I
Or
love
do
carbs.
I know.
Carbs are the sugar and the fuel for your body. It's just where you get your carbs from is where we need to be mindful of. We eat a lot of refined carbs, so processed food. You can go online and do like a course and call yourself a nutritionist. So a lot of people, and this is I guess one of my bugbears, is that when you get your nutrition advice from people, you just have to be really careful about, is it safe?
For your eyes
and your
for
hair
your skin and your hair.
skin.
Is that true? Or did I just was I just so stupid to eat all these carrots?
No,
is
so
there
there
such
is-
thing as too much carrots?
Respecting the traditional custodians, we acknowledge the Turrbal and Kaurna peoples as the original inhabitants of the lands now known as Brisbane and Adelaide. We pay our respects to their elders past, present and emerging, and recognize their enduring connection to the land, waters and culture. Hi guys, and welcome to another episode of Brown Girls Down Under. This is our 13th episode, and we'd like to say thank you so much for your support over the last 12 episodes. We really appreciate it. But to start off, I'm Shanali. I'm coming in from Brisbane, Australia, and we've got my usual host, Desh. How are you, Desh?
Hi, I'm Dashani. I'm joining in from Adelaide, South Australia, and we've got a very special guest today.
Yes, we've
Shanali.
got Oshara de Silva, who is...
Hi, Oshara.
Hi, Oshara.
Hi,
so
guys.
she's coming from Melbourne, and she's a dietitian in Melbourne. So we are very excited for this episode. It's something we really look forward to. And I think we've...
So many questions.
Yeah, and we've briefly touched on a few things in our previous episodes as well. So we are really looking forward to deep diving into some of these questions. So I'll let Oshara take over and tell us a little bit about her qualifications, her experience, and what really encouraged her to come into this field.
Yeah, so I guess it's been a bit of a journey. I am someone who's always wanted to work in like a health kind of field. Initially, I thought I wanted to be a doctor for the longest time. My grandparents were doctors, and I guess I really like idolized them. And so I went through this whole phase of thinking I wanted to become a doctor, but I didn't want to study. So that was kind of hard. Like, I didn't want to put in the effort, but I wanted to be a doctor.
It's a lot of effort. So
Exactly. It's a big commitment.
Yeah, definitely. And so I tried that. I flunked not flunked, but I didn't study, and I decided to do, so like in Australia, you have to do the UMAT, or if you come straight out of high school to become a doctor, like to try and get into medicine. If not, you do the GAMSAT. I did all those things, but I didn't study for them. And I was like, if I'm smart enough, I'll just get in.
get through it.
People study for like months and months,
Yes.
full on do tuition and things to get in. To be successful in those exams. So obviously that strategy didn't work.
Yeah.
And then I ended up on a pathway where I studied biomedicine. So I did that through the University of Melbourne. At the time, I kind of did my major in neuroscience, and I was super interested in that area. Came out of it, and I decided to do some research. So I went into an honors year, and I worked with general practitioners, so GPs, and I was looking at mental health in young people. Okay. So that was a really interesting, body of work that I did, and I wrote a thesis, and I ended up working with Headspace.
Nice.
You guys have probably heard of Headspace.
Yes.
It's an organization that provides a lot of mental health support for anyone really, but they were doing some special work with young people at the time. So I did that for a bit. So I worked for 6 months, but then I was still not really like, this is what I want to do. And so again, like I said, I went back to that fact that I wanted to start being healthcare. And I went through and looked at all my options in kind of what we call allied health, which is like, so in a hospital setting, you're going to get your doctors, you're going to get nurses, and then you get allied health. So that covers like physios, occupational therapists, social workers, speech pathology, and dietitians. And so I looked at all of those options. And then you, of course, have like podiatry and a couple of other smaller allied health teams as well. But something drew me towards nutrition. But it wasn't something that I was like, oh my God, I'm obsessed with nutrition and this is something I always wanted to do. I kind of fell into it. And it was so weird. I just like looked up the different courses that were available, and Monash Uni's intake was mid-year, which is also strange. Like usually they're the start of the year. It was in the middle of the year and it was closing in like a week. So I was like, I'll just apply. I didn't tell anyone at the time. Like I hadn't told my boyfriend, I hadn't told my family. I just applied and I got in and I was like, oh, okay. I guess I'm doing this now.
I'm doing this now. Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. And that's how I kind of ended up in it. And then I started studying it and I really enjoyed it. But I always, because I wanted that health kind of influence, that's why I still wanted to work quite strongly in a hospital. So I'm what you call a clinical dietitian at the moment. So I work in a hospital setting. And so I guess my job in a hospital is very different to what people think a normal dietitian does. But I have two kind of aspects to my dietetics kind of career, I would say. So I do the clinical dietetics work, but then I also do more private work as well, where I probably deal with the more traditional things that you would think about, where it's like, healthy eating or weight loss or building muscle or losing fat, like that kind of work. Whereas when I'm at my job, my 9-to-5 job, which is a clinical dietitian, I actually work in the intensive care unit. So it's very different. Where and everyone's like, what does a dietitian do in ICU? So if you think about it, a lot of the patients in ICU are on ventilators, so they can't eat and drink. So my job is working out exactly what their body needs at different stages of their disease and feeding them in different ways. So it could be tube feeding, it could be intravenous nutrition, so straight into the bloodstream, so many different ways of feeding people. So,
I've got a question.
Yeah.
So when you do that, do you also take into consideration on the medication they're on or on the treatment and how that's going to affect whatever diet you're going to prescribe?
Yeah. I mean, we also work with the pharmacist really closely. So I have some understanding of the major kind of drug food interactions, I guess. But there are always things like, a pharmacist goes to uni and only studies medications. So they understand medications into like a far deeper level than I would. So there might be things where they would come and tell me to adjust something because of this reason or whatever. But I guess it's a very holistic, multidisciplinary approach where everyone has a specialty. That's kind of what I do.
Nice.
So obviously, I think a lot of listeners might be also wondering, what's the major difference between being a dietitian and being a nutritionist or being studying nutrition?
Definitely. That's a really good question and something that I get asked a lot as well. I guess it depends based on where you are as well in terms of country. So in Australia, nutritionists are not actually monitored or accredited, right? You can go online and do like a course and call yourself a nutritionist. So a lot of people, and this is, I guess, one of my bugbears, is that when you get your nutrition advice from people, you just have to be really careful about is it safe? I mean, I don't know if you guys heard, like recently, just in Victoria, we had someone go to like a health retreat and tragically pass away because of some of the stuff that they were eating and drinking.
Wow.
So you have to be really careful. So a nutritionist you can do an undergraduate degree in uni and become a nutritionist as well.
Okay. Yeah.
But you're not able to work with anyone who has a medical condition. So
Okay.
a dietitian is the only profession that can provide nutritional medical therapy, is what we call
Okay.
it.
Right.
So
Makes
you have
sense.
to be a dietitian to work in a hospital, and usually dietitians are more qualified and they understand, I guess, the complexities of disease and food
Okay.
more.
Medical
where-
conditions. Yeah.
Yeah, and we're also accredited, and sort of there's a governing body that makes sure that people are, working within their scope.
So
Yeah.
there's a sort of a licensing that you get
Yes.
when you're a dietitian. Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
so you got to like pay a fee every year, and you can
right.
do so if you are working privately, you will have the opportunity to, depending on what kind of model you have, even
Yeah.
work through Medicare, and people can get rebates and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, it's a more monitored system as well, whereas anyone can be a nutritionist. But you can also become a nutritionist by going to uni. So it's not to say that everyone who's a nutritionist
Yeah.
isn't qualified, but it's not accredited, I guess.
So if someone were to say that, oh, I want to become a dietitian, then would they go through that path of like going to uni and becoming a nutritionist first and then going into it? Or
You could. So I never did an undergrad in nutrition. So I was never like a nutritionist, I guess.
Yeah, okay.
Because I did my undergrad in biomed.
That's right.
I just had done the prerequisite subjects to be able to get into a master's of dietetics. So a lot of the courses now in Australia are only masters. So yes, it's a bit
Interesting.
complicated depending on when you wanted to study, but right now everyone will end up doing a master's.
Yeah, and there's more than one pathway that you can take to, get to
Definitely.
where you are. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, so I think something that I am very personally interested in, and I'm sure our listeners and our viewers are also going to be very interested in this, is the current diet trend. So I think with social media, that I can see you smiling because I'm sure that you get this quite a lot.
Yeah.
Social media kind of talks so much about these things. There are so many, professional people who do their nutrition courses online and try to tell people, how to eat and all that kind of thing. There's diets such as the keto, the Mediterranean, the carnivore diet, so many things. I'm sure you've been rolling your eyes at some of them. What can you say about those things? Are they actually good? And what are the complications that come out of it? And
Look, there is a place for certain diets, depending on the person and their kind of condition. So I'll touch on a few of the ones you've mentioned. So, for example, you mentioned keto, right? So keto actually came because I use it in my job. So we use it as a treatment for people who have epilepsy and seizures.
Okay.
So I use keto in ICU, where we put people into ketosis because there is research to say that when you are in ketosis, the electrical kind of miscommunication in your brain that causes seizures is reduced.
Sorry to interrupt you, Oshara, but
Yeah.
I think for the audience who doesn't know what the keto diet is, let's just
Okay.
explain to them a bit about what keto is. And,
Yes,
yeah.
sure. So keto is like a high fat diet and low carbs. So it's meant to be, look, in reality, when people do keto, they just cut out carbs. mostly, right? That's not what actual keto is. Keto is you have to be eating a certain amount of fat in your diet because that's what produces the ketone bodies, as well as having really low amounts of carbs. So you need both of that. And for some people, they follow a diet where they reduce their carbs and they lose weight. Great.
Yeah.
I just think with any diet, you need to think, why am I doing this and is this sustainable?
Yeah.
Can I do this forever? Because if not, what happens is you lose weight and then most of the time you go back to eating the way you used to and you regain the weight.
Yeah.
And that's why we're in this really bad diet culture. Where people have really bad kind of, what would I say, like relationships with their bodies, food, their mental health. And they think nothing works. And most of the time it's because, firstly, what you started is not something you could keep doing. So it worked for while you were on it. And yeah, so like keto works for some people, but what they're actually doing is not keto, because to do keto you have to be checking your blood every day, checking your ketone levels, which is what your ketones are meant to go up. And then so that's what the keto diet is. But instead what we do in reality is a low carb diet, and we probably eat more fat and protein instead. And so for some people, if they were so protein and fat is going to help keep you feeling fuller for longer, and therefore sometimes people eat less. So it could be different reasons why keto is working for you to lose weight. And I think if something's working for you and your GP or your doctor has said that it's suitable for you, then it's okay to try it. But at some point you need to just make sure that it's, sustainable. And most of the time something like actual keto isn't sustainable. So yeah, that's keto. Carnivore diet, honestly, I don't know. I haven't had a lot of experience with that. I'm guessing it's just eating animal products, right?
Yeah, it's mostly meat. I see a lot of that especially for athletes, not just athletes, but mostly people like doing a lot of weight training and wanting like, results. Like, you also have to understand that there's people recommending these carnivore diets and all of this while they're being on steroids to look a certain way. So their diet is probably not the reason why that they're looking like that. They've been taking a lot of extra supplements and steroids to look a certain way, and that is not the norm. And I feel like even with like weight training, a lot of the reasons why a lot of females, probably I hear that very often, is the reason that they don't want to do weight training, even though it might be very good for you, is that they don't want to look very bulky and they don't want to look a certain way, when in reality looking like that is extremely hard. And if someone's looking like an abnormally, like, that sort of toned muscular way, that's probably because of supplements and steroids. It's not the natural way. So,
building muscle is really hard. And if you actually look at even elite level athletes, it takes ages to change your body composition. And I think that a couple points I'd touch on with this is, one, protein's not everything. It's super important, but there's actually something called too much protein. And if you eat too much protein, like, I see clients and they have been told by their PT to eat like 150, sometimes 200 grams of protein a day. Or they're having these shakes, like protein shakes that are like 60 grams per serve. And that is crazy town, because your body actually can't use that much protein in one go. Protein actually works really well if you have small amounts throughout the day. And depending on what your workout is for the day, if it was a weight session, then you might have extra protein on that day. Whereas if it's a cardio session, you actually need to eat more carbs on that day. And so for muscle recovery and growth, yes, protein's important, but having extra, like for most people, unless you're an elite level athlete who just purely is looking at, like, your job is your exercise, you
Yeah.
don't need more than 1.5 grams per kilo. So for example, if you're 60 kilos, you don't need more than 90 grams. And a breast of chicken could have like 40 grams of protein,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So that just shows how much overboard we go on buying these different products
Yeah.
So
to
did you mean like
supplement
90
our
grams
intake.
a day?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Really? Okay. Because I've seen people like these YouTube influencers and stuff like 140, 150 a day. And
Yeah.
they're
And
not
look,
really athletes.
it could be depending on
Yeah.
their body weight. And for some people, yes, you might go up to 2 grams per kilo, but anything more than that is really
Yeah.
not necessary. And it actually causes damage to your body.
I think the 0.2 grams per kilo is 0.2 grams per kilo of your body weight is recommended with if you are with exercise. So if you are exercising every day, if you're doing weight training 5-6 times a week, then that's the recommended amount of protein intake if you want to build muscle. But that's like, that doesn't
Sorry,
say
did you
that
mean 2 grams?
Yes, sorry,
Yeah.
2 grams.
Yeah.
So that's the recommended protein intake if you're wanting to build muscle and you're working out, and if you're, if you're putting your body through all that weight
Yeah, but
training.
it also depends how much you are working out. If you're going to the
Exactly.
gym and doing an hour session, which look, you probably you shouldn't be doing more than that. Even the 2 grams it depends on each person. I would never start someone off at 2 grams.
Yeah.
The recommendations for a healthy adult is 0.8 grams per kilo.
Right.
And they come up with these recommendations after doing a lot of research as well.
Yeah.
So a lot of people overeat protein, and over time it can damage your kidneys because protein is broken down and excreted through your kidneys. So if you're overeating it actually just damages the kidney because it has to work to expel it through your urine. Yeah.
There's this big emphasis on having so much protein, but I think people have to understand the other nutrients are equally
As
important to your body
important,
to
yeah,
function.
exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
Definitely. I think we focus too much. What we have lost over the years are our vegetables and like whole foods. So people just get too hung up on protein and fat and carbs without thinking about all those other things.
Are carbs as bad as people make them to be?
No, I
Or
love
do you-
carbs.
I know. I
Carbs are the sugar and the fuel for your body. It's just where you get your carbs from is where we need to be mindful of. We eat a lot of refined carbs, so processed food, which are high in fat and usually carbs. Whereas if you go back to, whole grains, so potato, sweet potato, rice, corn, all the things that are, grown in the ground, I guess.
This is just music to my ears because I love
I know.
potatoes.
I know,
love
potatoes
corn.
are so good, right? But again, it depends how it's prepared, like probably deep fried, not all the time. But if we go back to, those things, your brain only actually uses carbs as its primary source of energy, and your brain is the organ in your body that uses the most energy. So that's why if you're someone who's cutting out a lot of food, you're eating really low carbs, your brain fog is real because you can't actually think like you used to. So no one should eliminate carbs completely. How much carbs most of us overeat carbs, so if we can balance everything out, that's what we really need to do.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, speaking of balance, one of the other diets that, Desh and I would really like to know about is the Mediterranean diet, because there's a lot of emphasis on that at the moment. So can you just explain briefly what it is and if it's actually as good as everyone says?
the Mediterranean diet is great. it is a very balanced diet. So it really comes down to, like, the main kind of concepts of it are eating lots of fruits, vegetables, having a little bit of wine, and lots of healthy fat, including olive oil. And so, an oily fish, so like lots of seafood, not a lot of meat. So those are kind of the main concepts. And there's a lot of research actually to show that it improves your heart health. So especially coming from a, Sri Lankan background, we all, our families, friends who are from Sri Lanka or like anywhere, the South Asian countries, our cardiac health risk is really high. So, we all know people who've had heart attacks or, really bad outcomes because of their heart health. And sometimes they're super healthy, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
But something bad happens. So we do have to be careful. One of the reasons is they say that, our blood vessels are smaller. So our arteries and things like that are also smaller, which means that plaque, or I'm using a lot of random jargon, isn't it? Like blockages, I guess, can form. And because our blood vessels are smaller, we are more likely to get them quicker. So our heart health is super important. Our blood pressure is super important. Those are things that, I think anyone over the age of 25 should probably be seeing a doctor, checking that all those things are going okay, and having a basic checkup, because don't think that you're young and you're fine. I know a lot of people who, I do get a lot of clients as well who've checked those things and find out they have high cholesterol or high blood pressure, those kinds of things. And so the Mediterranean diet, there's a lot of research to say that it improves your heart health. So you can still include things like eggs as well, no issues, as part of that diet. But it's a very balanced diet. So it's really eating fruits, vegetables, lean white meat, not much red meat, lots of oily fish, eggs, olive oil, whole grains. That's about
They
it.
do have a lot of salads that has both vegetables and fruits and greens. They tend to have that with every sort of meal. So it's essentially, it's because Mediterranean diet is a very balanced diet. So you don't have, even if you can't have that, you just have a balanced diet. I think that's the
I know. I guess like there can be all these different terms assigned to a particular diet, but if you look at the core of what it is, it's the healthy eating principles that we would apply to anyone, really.
I think so. Speaking of the Mediterranean diet, and given that we're all three of us are Sri Lankan, the Sri Lankan diet's very close to our heart, and or the South Asian diet in general, we have a lot of we have a lot of grains, vegetables in our diet, but at the same time, we also have a lot of coconut milk that we use in a lot of our meals. And if I can say anything about Sri Lankan diet, is like we make curry out of every little thing. Like everything we can find on this earth, we'll make a curry out of it, right? So let's talk, Oshara, let's explain what the sort of Sri Lankan diet usually typically contains, and let's talk about the impact on that on us as Sri Lankans, aging, as well as like is it healthy? Is it what it used to be back in the day? Was our ancestors have a better diet back then? Obviously now that with modernization we also tend to eat a lot of processed food, but let's talk a bit about the Sri Lankan diet.
So I guess, mostly if I think of Sri Lankan food, I think of rice with curries, right?
Yeah.
But obviously it's much more than that. There's other types of, other than rice, we might substitute it for different types of, carbohydrate or like starchy foods. So it
Yeah.
might be string hoppers or rotis or whatever. So overall, I guess the Sri Lankan diet, I think, is really healthy. It just depends on how you eat it, like in terms of your portions.
Right.
I think a lot of us, it's a very Sri Lankan kind of mindset where we eat a lot of rice. And we don't eat as much of those other the meats or the vegetables on our plate. So that is where sometimes you can come into a bit of trouble. But if you are eating, so I guess you got to think about how much rice you're serving onto your plate, as long as that isn't. So in reality, it shouldn't be more than a cup of cooked rice. Okay. So if you're eating more than that, my suggestion is try and cut that down a little bit. And your body is going to be used to eating the portions of carbs you are eating. So it needs to kind of happen gradually. And you need to have more of the meat and the vegetables to help fill your stomach. If not, you're going to be starving.
Yeah.
So in terms of talking about like the coconut milk side of things, this is, I guess, a little bit controversial because the research is a bit, there is some research to say that coconut milk is good, but that research hasn't been well studied and not applied across, like it's not replicated. So when people do research, like you could probably find research, a paper out there to kind of prove anything you want, really.
Yeah.
Right? But when research is done, you have to be able to look at it critically, see the quality of it, and be able to replicate it.
The results. Yeah.
Exactly. So if you can't do all that, then you can't make generalized commentary or recommendations for populations. So we're at a stage where at the moment, from a professional standpoint, coconut milk is not something that should be used excessively because it can increase bad fat or like unhealthy types of fat in your body. And that's what builds up into causing heart issues as well.
Yeah.
Into causing those blocks in your blood vessels. So it could be multifactorial that, yes, maybe we do eat a little bit too much coconut milk in our diet, which also is why Sri Lankans as a population have more cardiac issues or heart issues compared to other people. That hasn't been like, again, that's just my thoughts. It hasn't been necessarily studied. So my thing is, look, I still love a curry with coconut milk. I haven't cut it out of my diet or anything, but I think about how much I'm adding.
Yeah.
Because you can, if you think about a meal, you can really adjust how much oil, coconut milk you add, and the taste will be different, but you get used to it.
Yeah.
Exactly. So I just try to kind of keep that in mind and use little less, like, to be honest, my husband does most of the cooking on our daily life. I'm pretty lucky. But I'll go and instruct. So I'll be like telling him how much, instead of adding the whole tin, maybe you'll add half and you might go for a lower fat coconut milk option. I mean, here we are buying the, tins and stuff, right? But if you're scraping your own coconuts and doing, you're able to do all that, then you might just add a little bit less. But yeah, I think people have this really bad mindset of, oh, you can't eat rice. Rice is the demon. So because of that, they think they can't eat Sri Lankan food. And there's no such thing. In terms of our ancestors, it's, I don't know, like I wasn't around then. But
really?
If you think back to our ancestors, they did more active jobs. They did labor, right? Whereas we sit in front of a desk, most of us at a computer, we probably now do some work from home. We don't even walk outside some days. So we are very sedentary
Yeah.
and we eat more,
Yeah.
probably. So, and also back then there was probably more of a scarcity mindset as well, right? Where food was probably like in some areas, I mean, even nowadays, it's a luxury to eat certain types of
Exactly. Yeah.
food. So you're just more mindful of what you eat when. Whereas now, most of us, we tend to eat more volumes, do less activity, and therefore we think that it's a certain cuisine that's the issue, whereas it's
Yeah.
more about a lifestyle.
Yeah.
Exactly, maintaining
Absolutely.
an active lifestyle.
Yeah.
And I think, I don't know if you came across this, but I know, speaking about coconut milk, people were starting to, like, I feel like it's either last year or maybe last couple of years, people were starting to have coconut milk lattes, like coconut milk in their coffees.
Yeah.
So I was like very intrigued by that. I was like, I don't
know.
know how I feel
I
about
wonder
this.
how that tastes. I mean,
Yeah.
I think it would
Coconut's
be
quite strong.
pretty
like, it's a
oily.
strong, yeah. It's
It would feel pretty like greasy
yeah,
to me.
exactly.
Exactly. And
I
very
think that's-
fatty.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's probably taking it a bit too far, I think.
Yeah, but then I also see this very popular neurosurgeon on TikTok, and I see a lot of doctors do this, but they have butter with their coffee, and
yeah.
apparently that keeps them full for a very long time.
Yeah.
So again, that
but
goes back to what I said about fat and protein
Exactly,
help
yeah.
keep you fuller for longer.
Okay,
You probably don't need to eat butter to get the fat because butter is going to be highly saturated or like bad fat. Whereas you could have a healthier type of fat like avocado or
Oh, that's true. Yeah.
something like that. But again, I mean, no kind of like, each to their own.
Yeah.
But you got to think about, I work with medical professionals every day. They learn, I think most of them have told me they had one lecture in their whole degree on nutrition.
Oh, wow.
Right? So, which is why people like myself exist in a hospital setting. So
Exactly.
I'm not telling them how to be a doctor and they're not telling me how to be a dietitian, right? So we
Yes.
each have our specialty. So just because someone who you think should know something, it's like, I always say, like, we never go to a plumber if we have an issue with our tooth. We're going to go to a dentist, and you'll go to a plumber when you have an issue with your taps, right? Or your plumbing. But when it comes to nutrition, we go everywhere to get information, but not to the people who have specialized in that industry.
Yeah, right. Yeah. And I think people need to also be mindful, just because you see a neurosurgeon in social media eating or drinking a certain thing, we don't know what their lifestyle is. We don't know if that's the only meal they're going to have for the day, or they might be actually be on a diet and they might be having that because they're on that particular diet or because to treat their medical condition. We don't know. So just because I think people need to be people need to think more carefully before copying someone, just because they have specialized in certain area or they're in the medical field, that doesn't necessarily apply to yourself, and it doesn't mean that it's
And another thing I just wanted to ask was, like, recently there's been a big focus on spices as well. I think, like, the Western diets are kind of trying to bring in, like, the turmeric lattes and cinnamon. They're focusing, and this is like stuff that we obviously grew up eating. And when I moved here and there was so much focus on this, I was like, it was kind of shocking to me because it was so normal to us. So is it actually like as good as, they make it out to be, or is it just like an addition to food that we did, or?
I think the more Western cuisines don't have any spices in them,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So
Isn't it funny that
they're
they colonized us for
they-
their spices and now they don't even use spices?
Yeah.
they-
And they just use salt and pepper. It's
Yeah.
like, what's the point?
So they're getting their kind of spice through their turmeric latte. Fine.
Yeah.
If we're adding it to our cooking, there is a lot of, there is evidence to say that spices like cinnamon and turmeric do have health benefits.
Yeah.
If we're adding it to our cooking, great. You don't need to go and seek out an additional way to get that into your diet. So yeah, like you don't need to spend $7 on turmeric latte.
Right? Yeah. Just put it in
I
your
don't know how I
party
feel about that too. Like,
I've actually never had it.
I've had it. It's
Okay, how does
very-
it taste?
so strong.
I wouldn't think it would
No,
taste good.
it's not nice. You know, people
Yeah.
do this like golden milk before bed and stuff. If I had that
That's
before
true.
bed, I would be crying.
I've seen
like it's
that.
horrible. It's
But-
not nice.
people do that. I think people in like Indian culture do that too.
They do
Apparently,
that,
it's meant
yeah.
to help with your skin. I don't know if it's supposed to help with your like gut health or anything, but
Yeah.
I don't know.
It doesn't taste good. I'll tell you that.
I wouldn't imagine it.
Just
to.
eat your paripu, guys. Just eat your paripu. That's
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. It's so much better. But I also had another question because I grew up eating. So my mother always encouraged me to eat lots of carrots, eat lots of green leaves. So apparently
Is
because
this for
it's
your
meant to.
eyes?
Yeah, for your eyes
And your
for
hair?
your skin and your
your
hair.
skin,
Is that
yes.
true? Or did I just was I just so stupid to eat all these carrots?
No,
is there
so there
such
is-
thing as too much carrots?
I mean, look, I don't, unless you've turned orange, that's probably when you've gone overboard. I think, so I guess a lot of that comes from the fact that some of the nutrients that you find in those kind of vegetables are shown to, so it's like vitamin A and E,
Yeah.
things like that, are good for your hair, your skin. And yeah, it does help. But if you're someone who has tried those things and it's not working for you, you might need more help. So like, some people could be struggling with acne, like
Yeah.
really severe acne, and just eating carrots and, having green leaves might not work. Like it might not be enough for you. So
Exactly.
again, I think it's not about like, there's a lot of the evidence and research nowadays comes from the fact that we tend to eat a lot of the same vegetables as well.
Yeah,
And that's
exactly.
also been shown to be not great for your gut health. And there's a massive connection between your gut and your brain. Like an actual neural or like a nerve pathway where they communicate. So you need to actually include a variety. So it's all about how many types of vegetables and grains and fruit that you eat. So try not to get hung up on just eating one thing and include lots of different
Explore.
things.
variety.
Yeah, exactly.
And I find that it's harder in, I guess, the Western world where we don't necessarily get lots of variety. But I think it's also about where you shop. So
Exactly, yeah.
for anyone listening in who's like, for example, in Australia, if you're just going to Coles or Woolworths to do your fruit and veg shopping, you're not going to get much. But if you go to markets and, more Asian groceries,
That's right.
then
yeah.
you're going to get those vegetables that we get back home that are still going to be beneficial for you. And different fruits and vegetables give you different nutrients, so don't get hung up on just eating one thing for one benefit.
Yeah.
But if you include a variety, you're going to cover most of your bases.
Yeah, that's true.
Exactly. So I went to this earlier this week, I went to this hot pot place and they had at least 10 different kinds of mushrooms. And I'm like, what? I've never seen some of these ever in my life. So they've got so much variety.
Yeah.
Well, obviously not just mushrooms, but so many in all this and so many different kinds of like spinach and different types of leaves, different types of bok choys. And it's just, yeah.
Yeah, and I just
But-
encourage everyone to just explore. Like if you're not sure about, you've never seen something, just snap a picture. I mean, depending on what kind of tech you have on your phone, but you can take a picture and it can tell you what that is. And then
yes.
think about how you can make a meal out of it, or how you might incorporate it into something you're already eating, and just try it out. Because a lot of us, I mean, some of us, haven't been big on eating vegetables as kids maybe, and then that really limits what we eat as adults. So you just gotta try different ways to
try
cook things
different.
and
Exactly. And being in Australia, it's such a multicultural country. You can explore other cuisines, try different things, and then you might like certain things, and then you can learn how to cook those things in different ways. Yeah, exactly.
yeah.
So yes, we've spoken about having like a balanced diet and, sometimes missing out on certain nutrients if we don't eat certain things. There has been some talk of supplementing it using like actual supplements, like, tablets that you can just get from supermarket shelves and stuff. Is that actually like, because I've heard people say that that's just expensive pee because you'll just pee it out and so is that actually the case, or is there actually some truth to it, or is it just a placebo effect that people feel when they take these supplements?
I think it sorry, excuse me, things went down the wrong pipe. I think there is a space for supplements. The type of supplements you're taking and why you're taking them are important to kind of consider as well. So a lot of the kind of thoughts that I have around supplementation is, it's a supplement, it's not a substitute. So you still need to eat fruits, vegetables, whole grains, all those things, because your body absorbs them differently. If you are wanting to take a supplement, my suggestion is go and get a blood test as well from your doctor. Just double check your levels of, so usually, your doctor will check magnesium, calcium. You can ask for your, other micronutrients like B12, selenium, zinc, probably to start with, because certain things can be toxic to your body if you take too much. So you want to make sure your levels are not already really high, and then you go take a supplement on top. Right? And then you might also find you have a deficiency. So another really common deficiency that we have with our darker skin is vitamin D. So most of us, I would say like a large proportion of us would have low vitamin D. And actually vitamin D is super important in certain chemical pathways in your body. So if it's low, you really should take a supplement. And then iron is the other one as well, especially females with getting our period and bleeding every month. You can lose iron through there too. And then if you're someone who donates blood often, your iron stores can go down that way as well. So yes, supplements are necessary for some people. For some people, it's not. It's really a personal choice. For me, I use supplements, but I'm really careful about what kind of supplements I take. You just want to make sure that they are pharmaceutical grade. Just because they're sold in a pharmacy does not mean they're pharmaceutical grade. In Australia, most supplements are food grade, which means that what is on the label is not legally required to be in the bottle. That's mind-blowing. Right?
Oh, okay.
So just because something says it has X amount of a nutrient and it comes in a bottle and you buy it at the chemist does not necessarily guarantee that that's what's in the bottle that you've paid for. Because they're not manufactured like a medication. So whereas if you go and buy Panadol or like, paracetamol and it says it has this many milligrams of something, legally it has to be in that because it's a medication. Supplements are food grade.
So what's the point of putting that on the label then?
they
Just to
can
show-
they can just sell it to
lure
you.
people in.
It's like plus or minus X,
Oh,
you know,
okay.
like
There's
it's not,
Okay.
yeah. And then also the bioavailability. So, for example, what happens to that sub tablet when you take it, or the powder, and you take it into your body, how much of it is actually absorbable by the body
Yeah,
depends on the
exactly.
quality of the product. So not all fish oil, for example, are the same quality. So don't just go by the cheapest one as well. So do your research and kind of figure out the right supplements. So then sometimes, honestly, it's better not to take it than go
Yeah.
and buy something that's low quality.
Yeah.
So, and then, you know, if it's thinking about things like fish oil, you want to make sure they are not high in mercury, because obviously the fish oil comes
Yeah.
from fish. Fish eat
Yeah.
other fish. And so you need to make sure that the type of fish that they're using for the
Yeah.
fish oil is not going to give you mercury poisoning, right?
Yeah,
So there's
yeah.
all these things that we don't think about
Yeah,
when we go
exactly.
and put supplements in our body. So I still suggest you touch base with a professional, like a dietitian, to help you with those things. I guess the other side is, you know, supplementation for performance improvement. So, you know, if you're someone who's gymming a lot, you might be taking caffeine, you might be taking creatine,
yeah.
you could be taking so many things. Those are probably a waste of money.
Oh, really?
I
Okay.
should tell MJ this.
I mean, I
wanna
take
take my
creatine. Yeah, I take creatine as well.
So
this is good to know.
Yeah.
So I learned this stuff more probably in my undergrad degree when I did biomedicine, because we did physiology, right?
Right.
And there is a little bit of evidence for creatine and things coming up, but again, unless it's your job where you care to improve your performance, I don't know. Unless you've got tons of money and you want to spend it,
Yeah.
sure, go for it.
exactly.
But if not, it's not necessarily making an impactful difference to your exercise routine for most people.
Exactly, because most of us are exercising to have a healthy lifestyle, right?
Yeah.
So active lifestyle. It's not like we have goals to reach. We have
Yeah.
to look a certain way by the end of this month. So
Yeah.
I don't really, if it's doing for your, if you're doing this for your health, I don't see
Point of it.
a necessity
Yeah.
for those supplements.
Whereas
Yeah.
if you're, you know, I think if you're iron deficient or vitamin D deficient, you probably do need to take a supplement for that.
Yeah, exactly.
Because it is part of your healthy
Yeah.
balance
Yeah.
of your body being able to do its job.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we
Yeah.
touched briefly on exercise, and I don't think I actually mentioned this at the start. So Oshara and I actually consulted Oshara a few years ago with my diet and everything, and she was super helpful in that. And I think at that point I was very big on like doing cardio, and you told me that, you know, cardio alone is not enough. You need resistance training, you need weight training, and you kind of pushed me to do that. So how important is exercise and resistance training, like having a balance between cardio and resistance training, and over like to your overall lifestyle?
Again, that depends on what your goals are, right? For each person. So I think, you know, if you're looking at losing weight, which is probably what most people,
Yeah.
you know, are usually thinking about, you need a mix of both. But you also can lose weight without doing any exercise. So it's just exercise can be a catalyst, a vehicle to help you achieve your goals quicker. But I work with tons of people who also just adjust their diet if it's just weight loss. But if you're looking at an overall improvement to your health, then we know that exercise improves a lot of chronic diseases, a lot of issues that we have with, you know, like those, like cholesterol or blood pressure or those kind of things that I was speaking
Even mental
about.
health.
Oh
Yeah, 100%. So there is a role for exercise in that balance. So again, it depends on what you want to do. So I think it's really important to acknowledge that different people want different things.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
And then if you are doing exercise, one, you kind of got to think about what you enjoy. Like some people hate cardio.
Me.
Not me. Love
Or
cardio.
some people just don't want to do weights. But so again, each type of exercise offers a different benefit. So that's why I encourage people to usually do both types, because you're getting different things from each type of exercise. So how it affects the way your body is going to use stored energy, or the impact it's going to have on your blood sugar or your blood pressure is going to be more beneficial with cardio. But if you're doing exercise, you're building muscle, so your metabolism increases, you're going to lose weight quicker. You're also going to be less likely to have like fractures as you get older, because your bones are going to be stronger, your muscles are going to be stronger. So those are things we don't think about. Like right now, nobody's probably thinking about, oh, the weights I'm doing now are going to help me when I'm 75, but it will. So that's why a bit of everything is beneficial. But you got to think about what you like. Like if someone really hates something, you know, I've got to consider that in my recommendations, because I'm not going to make you do things you hate, but I will educate
it's not
you.
sustainable then, right?
Yeah, but I'll educate you about, you know, I know you don't like it, but if you ever consider it, this is the benefit. And, you know, maybe go and seek, again, I'm not a exercise specialist. Go and see someone who might be able to tell you how to, you know, gradually get into cardio if you hate that. Or you might find, you know, you don't like running kind of cardio, but you might like dancing. And dancing is still a form of cardio. So it's exercise can be in different shapes and forms, and it's about getting our bodies moving however you may want to do that.
Exactly. Yeah. Pretty
This
cool.
has been such an informative episode. Like I feel like I'm just like listening, trying to consume everything, and we've got heaps more questions, but obviously this has gone on for a while, so we're gonna end the episode.
We could go for days.
Honestly, we are gonna end the episode here. But
I'm also a big talker, so I could talk for days.
oh no, that's what we want. Yes, but we will definitely have Oshara again for another episode if she wants to come on. That is.
Definitely, more than happy to once we figure out our schedules.
Absolutely, that is I think our biggest problem.
That's the tough bit.
Yeah. So before we end the episode, Oshara, you did mention that you do personal sessions and consultations. So do you want to tell our viewers and our listeners a little bit about that and how they can contact you?
Yeah, of course. So at the moment, if you want to reach out with any questions or you want to consult with me, you can reach out to me through Instagram. Might be the easiest. I'm at Nourish by Oshara. So that might be the easiest way. And then I will link you in with how you can make your booking with our team. And then it's usually just done all virtually, so through like a video call, and again, a lot of my ethos and what I kind of work with people about is making things sustainable, working for their lifestyle, and making sure that it's not some quick fix, because that doesn't work. There is no quick fix that has been shown to give people long-term results, because if there was, everybody would do it.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
And we wouldn't have the problems that we do with our eating and our health. So that's how you can contact me. I also work with Samakya, if you guys have heard of her, so she's more an exercise specialist, as I was saying before. I'm not that. So we have our own brand called Samakya. So it's smkya.life on Instagram as well, if you want to reach out through there.
We'll put the like the screenshots here of both.
And the links in our YouTube, in our description as well. And if you've got any questions, we can always direct you to Oshara's page. And she should be able to help with all your questions. And if you've got any questions, send us them so we can arrange another time with Oshara to discuss more into detail about these issues.
Absolutely.
And more questions.
Yeah.
But yeah, thank you so much, Oshara, for
Thank you so much
taking
for
your
having
time.
me and for thinking of asking me, Shonali, as well.
That's okay.
It's been so nice to
It is an
chat
honor
with you
to
guys
have
today.
you. Thank you so much. I know you're so busy. You've got so much going on, but we really, really appreciate it. So thank you so
Yeah.
much. And we'll see you in another episode then.
Yeah, catch you guys then.
Take care, guys.
Bye.
Bye.
See ya.